All right, there's that. Let's get our Facebook groups in here. Fingers crossed that comes across here. Let's see. Let's got the spinning wheels. All right, they're still spinning. There's one and there's two. Let's give it a second to breathe. Typically, it happens about a minute in when it disconnects, so we won't know. But we're gonna go anyway. Welcome in, welcome in. It is 7:44 Mountain Time. Victory Monday. It's time for an episode of Broncos for Breakfast. I am Nick Kendell and joined by Scott Kennedy. Scott, that was a thorough, complete beatdown. One of the Broncos' most lopsided victories I can recall in a long time. And the vibes in Broncos country coming off of a 2-game losing streak against probably the 2 toughest games on the schedule. The Denver Broncos answered emphatically and said, "We're an interesting team, and you better bring your A game when you come to Denver." And with how the AFC is shaking out, I don't know if Denver can get anything besides the 7th seed, but they're made a very strong statement about being a playoff contender this season.
Yeah, we've talked about the mental toughness of this team a lot. So you go out to Baltimore and lay an egg against the Ravens. No pun intended out there. No play on words. And you come back. You got to turn around and go right back on the road to KC. And you outplayed the Chiefs and lost a heartbreaker. Monday, we said, I do believe the attitude of this team will be defiant, not down or downtrodden, depressed, anything, but defiant. Now, if they had gone out and gotten blown out by the Chiefs also in back-to-back games, then you start wondering, like, well, maybe we're just not there. It's okay. We got 80-something million in dead cap. We got a bunch of guys that probably won't be here next year. They're playing on one-year deals. But no, you believed you should have won that game against the Chiefs, which kind of pissed you off that you didn't. And you came out, home game. That's a big one too, coming back home. And you took advantage of the fact, and again, the defense has played fantastic. The offense was crisp, clean, and again, the mental toughness of this team is where you're at. And Sean Payton said it yesterday. He goes, we might not have had some of that toughness and grit with last year's squad, but this group does, and it absolutely does. And I from what I've watched, I believed in the defiance and the attitude of this team.
They definitely seem to have they paid and gave the keys to Sean Payton, which, you may not like him. Some people think he's, an arrogant a-hole, but as Scott likes to say, he's our arrogant a-hole. And boy, has he built a culture and a team in his vision. And the turnaround in Denver and the rebuild in Denver is, we keep saying it, isn't ahead of schedule. I mean, I definitely sure as heck did not see this team being 6-5 and looking this good with this much dead cap, with this few top 100 picks on the roster. I mean, this looks like a team that, I'm not saying Super Bowl, obviously, but you get into the playoffs, that to me is ahead of schedule, and you're going to be probably a tough out. Now, the 7th seed, you're heading to Buffalo at this point. That's a hard game. Nobody probably picked Denver in that one, but defense and Bo Nix playing good football and just continuously improving. That's great. And I think we have to start there. We want to say hello first. Todd coming in. Good to see you. We got Jeremy says not bad for an overdrafted old quarterback with a weak arm. Yeah, I definitely at this point look like I definitely underrated Bo Nix. I thought pretty early on it was obvious that he was much more athletic than I gave him questions. And the first 8 games, I think this is fair criticism. He didn't look comfortable in the pocket. His feet were erratic. He was bailing on a very good pass protecting offensive line up front, and it just didn't look like there was harmony between his feel in the pocket in the drop back game and the offensive line, which has been arguably one of the best pass protection offensive lines in football this season. I think ever since the Carolina game, things looked like they're starting to slow down for Nix. Now, I do think sometimes he could be a little bit better sticking on that first read. Sometimes guys are coming open. He's getting to that check down, and I think against maybe some tougher defense. And you're talking like football quarterbacking 301 there. That's nitpicking. Nix is playing awesome football. He looks like a franchise quarterback. And while his average depth of target was the second lowest in the NFL this week at, I think, 4.1, he still had some high leverage throws. That throw to Vele, I don't know what quarter it was when it happened, but he pinned it between 3 different guys there and ripped it. Granted, not outside the hash mark throws, but he ripped it, and that took anticipation, that took arm talent, that took touch. good mechanics. He did it all. So there was, I mean, 4 or 5 throws in this game that were like, oh my gosh, that's a NFL starting, good quality NFL starting quarterback. And again, we don't want to say that, he's the next coming of John Elway or, he's going to be Patrick Mahomes or anything like that. This was a absolutely dreadful Falcons defense. I think it's important to point that out, but Nix is thoroughly, emphatically answering any questions and doubts that I had coming into this season. And I do want to point out, Scott, I'm kind of on, getting on the soapbox here, but I think a lot of people, especially in the NFL draft and NFL media, can get a little bit of anchor bias where they will like, here's my take and I'm going to prove it and stand on this no matter what. I do think there's something to be said about, not overreacting to a small sample size. But Nix now is stacked 3, 4, 5 games in a row where the arrow keeps trending up. And do you hear that? It might be some Bo Nix offensive rookie of the year music starting to play here as he closes the gap on Jaden Daniels. So
yeah, he's 1B right now for offensive rookie of the year. Like Daniels was out to a pretty big lead. If I stack up the numbers right now, Daniels is still just a little bit of ahead.
Vegas agrees.
It didn't count yesterday's the last time I looked. So this yesterday's numbers hadn't come in yet, I don't think. Either way, it's absolutely in the conversation now. Jaden Daniels coming off playing the Eagles and the Steelers. The competition took a step up, but I believe we could be a playoff team. Look at the way you're playing right now. You're 6-5. Now look at your next 3 opponents: 2-8, 2-8, and the Indianapolis Colts, I think, are 5-6. And I think that one's at home too.
It is.
We said last week as we were going through this, I was like 3-1 at worst in this next 4, and you're looking at 8-6. Well, and that's still probable. Now that's probable. You're going to be favored heavily in the next 2 games, and then you'll be favored by probably 4 to 5 at home against the Colts. Will you win all of those? Probability says it's going to be tough.
Yeah,
but 9-5 isn't out of the freaking question, man. Remember when I said 10-7 looks about right at this stage, because I'm still counting the Chiefs as a win in week 18.
Yeah, you're sitting there. You just passed your Vegas win total for the preseason before Thanksgiving show. Congrats to those who made that bet, and anybody who took even the longer odds, 7+ wins, 8+ wins, whatever. You might be sitting pretty cashing that in at some point. But we got Patriot Tech saying, unbelievable game. Denver played great in all 3 phases. Bo passed for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. I believe we could be. Yeah, you already got this. I just want to touch again. Bo Nix, the 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, an unbelievable game. I think he was 5 incompletions, a few of those drops as well. I mean, he played about as clean of a game as you can possibly want from the quarterback. Again, the ADOT was not very high, a lot of screens, a lot of quick game stuff, but the Falcons were giving you that. So what a good quarterback. So you don't press it when it's not there. You can't, what do they say? You can't go broke, taking a profit. So that's what they did.
Tells you a lot about the defense. You mentioned looking comfortable. I'm like, hell, you could pull up a lazy boy, against the Falcons pass rush. The second lowest. I mean, listen to how you said that and listen to what you just said. The second lowest average depth of target, and he throws for 300 yards on like 30 attempts. What's that tell you about the underneath stuff being open?
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, there have been some elite quarterbacks. Now, granted, this is of yesteryear. Defenses have changed. Offenses have changed. But I mean, you're the Patriots for a number of years, Drew Brees, where they would essentially run the ball through the air, right? They would
did it exactly. They executed that game plan to perfection. There was one play call the entire game. I was like, as I'm watching this game, I'm like, I've only seen 2 mistakes, and one of them got reversed on a replay. I was like, okay, LJ dropped the ball. That was a mistake. That one got reversed. So let's not even count that one anymore. The screenplay was a big part of the screen game was a big part of this game plan, because the Falcons rush 4 up and they don't get off blocks. They've got one linebacker. If you throw it away from Caden Ellis, Nate Landman's not going to catch anybody. And their defensive backs play in the stands. They drop so far off. So the screen game is going to be a big part. However, the second drive, they ran a screen on 3rd and 13. that's not when you want to run that screenplay. And I'm like, okay, one mistake and that was the only time they punted. I think they may have been the only punt the Broncos had. I was like, I can think of one mistake in 4 quarters of football for the Broncos offense. It was chef's kiss execution.
Yeah, they dominated. We got proud Zenial 81 with the 2 golden retrievers, I think, here. Shout out to you. Yeah, proud golden father here too. Says he was bad dog yesterday. He's got an ear infection and he got into his ear meds and chewed up the the medicine. So yeah, Goldens are they're very sweet, but not always their stomachs are larger than their brains. Says not crazy to think we'll go 10-7 playoff berth. I officially believe Broncos country in Gilbert, Arizona. Yeah, shout out to you. Thank you so much for the super
Lots
chat.
of Arizona Broncos. Some of our best members, including proud Zenial.
Yeah, we got Jason Kopp also coming in $4.99. Thank you so much for the super chat. You guys are definitely helping with me having to get more gosh darn dog ear meds probably and all this other stuff. So appreciate you coming in as well. Yeah, it was a pretty unbelievable game. David Youngkin's in here. We got Mad Scientist, Falcon fan here, ready to eat his crow. Congratulations on a well-earned victory. Kick their butts. Yeah, absolutely. They did kick the butts. Thoroughly. You're going to be great. We got Donald said, Nick and Scott, thanks for the podcast and your honest analysis of our team. We don't always get it right. I mean, I was very much a skeptic of Bo Nix coming in. That Oregon offense, he was not pressured very often, and it was primary read to check down. And I didn't know he wasn't asked to make a lot of high leverage throws in that offense with the spacing. But by all means, I don't think he's a trick shot artist. I'm stealing the words here from one of my favorite analysts, Nate Tice, where you have like Matt Stafford throwing like crazy stuff with arm talent in different angles. I don't think he's got that club in his bag, so to speak, that the level of like Caleb Williams and Drake may do coming out of this class. But that's like, what do you think, Scott? 1 to 3% of your throws in the NFL game. I mean, Peyton Manning wasn't a trick shot artist. Having a hard time there with that one.
You have a sharding problem here?
You know what? With as much coffee as I'm going to have to drink today with the little sleep I got with the sick kid, maybe. But that's my problem.
Y'all know Nick and I were both 6-11 to start the season, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, the offense is playing into about where I expected them to play. Now, 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, that's a little bit of an anomaly. I don't expect that every week. But week to week, it is rounding into form where it can become an average offense.
Mm-hmm.
What we never expected, and if you tell me you did, you lie, was this defense. Mm-hmm. This defense is so much better than we ever expected. That it's been the difference between, okay, we're liking what we're seeing from the future. Bo Nix looks like the guy we hoped he could be. We're going to hang around 500 and, win a game here and there. From that to this is a playoff team. This is a playoff team. The offense with a rookie quarterback and a bunch of cast-off wide receivers and Cortland Sutton is rounding into an average to above average offense, and the defense is top 5. The defense is blown my mind how good they've played this year, and we're far enough into the season to say this is a top 5 defense. And
Scott, we need like coffee mugs or shirts that say this phrase, but trenches, trenches, trenches. This was a game that really showed how far the Broncos have come and just the difference they have in this game. I mean, Bo Nix playing an incredible game. There's not a stat that I don't think the Broncos won in this one in the head-to-head. But the feeling of this game was just the Broncos were so much superior on both sides of the lines of scrimmage in this one. I mean, I think Bo Nix did get a sack in this one. Credit to Judon. He tripped over McGlinchey, but McGlinchey got under his pads and pushed him back. But the Broncos defensive line, they did an awesome job stopping the run. I mean, Bijan was coming in, having an unbelievable game. And early on, it looked like there was some ability there. But once they got behind and they figured out that outside zone, there was nothing there. I think Bijan finishes the day with...
And Nick, for all the injuries, the one that nobody talked about for the Falcons was Charlie Warner. That was a big loss, who's arguably the best blocking tight end in the NFL. Kyle Pitts takes himself out of games. Charlie Warner is, what you're going to get. And Pitts was so ineffective when the Falcons came out in the second half and threw the ball 3 straight times with their first possession. Pitts wasn't on the field until 3rd down. And Charlie Warner was out. That was you talk about the dominating right there. That was one we're not talking about. The defensive disaster that is the Atlanta Falcons had almost nothing to do with injuries. They've been a disaster. Don't let anybody tell you that it is because, they were beat up. My ass. They didn't lose an impact player out of that entire bunch. They lost a couple of reserve defensive linemen, a journeyman corner, and a nickel that are just guys. They didn't lose an impact player. That defense has been playing that go backwards, soft as Charmin scheme all year. And instead of going forward and pressing Bo Nix, they went backwards and just opened up the 15 yards to the line of scrimmage all game, and they took advantage of it.
I like Nick Beckwith's comment here that we won the Scott Bowl against the Falcons. Scott's team is not the Falcons. He lives in Atlanta.
When have I ever given you the impression that I live and die with the Atlanta Falcons, for God's sakes?
Chelsea
you know where I live and die is with watching stupid stuff. And no matter who it is, y'all should have seen me at the Broncos game watching Sean Payton call an offense between the hash marks trying to fight the Pittsburgh Steelers in a phone booth. Oh, I'm so miserable to sit next to in games because I see stuff like that. I'm like, you're making $10 million. Well, sorry, $18 million to think you want to go toe to toe with the Steelers. Nobody should be forced to watch a defense. That's not football that the Atlanta Falcons play. No, I'm not taking anything away from the Broncos because the Broncos took advantage of what the Falcons give them, which is everything short. And those short screen plays turn into explosive plays when you start beating down a team and the effort starts to wane a little bit and you put your foot on their throat and they give up. They stop chasing. Then those underneath passes, those 4-yard average depth of targets turn into 30-yard explosives.
Yeah. Gatorade Gaming, good morning to you. Hope you're doing well. I did want to say hello to Michael Ronquillo as well, talking about Arizona. Says, good morning, Nick and Scott on Broncos for breakfast. Go Bo Broncos. Jamal Killings is in the house. Perry West, great team win. Go Broncos. Greg Smith as well. Great to see you. Thanks again. You had to say hello to Perry West again. $20. Thank you.
Don't just roll over Perry. Perry, thank you again.
I had to come back to Perry, but I was right there. I had to say hello to Jamal and our guys, of course, Greg, because, they're OGs, but Perry with the $20. This is obviously, times are tough. Who knows about the economy right now, Christmas coming up and everything, but, supporting us like with $20 just to come in and say, great team win, go Broncos means the absolute world to us, Perry. So thank you so much. Hope you're having a good November and have a great Thanksgiving as well. And it's hard not to, have a good time with the Broncos. Pretty good. And Scott, you know what I'm pretty bummed about? Have you seen this Thanksgiving slate of games? I hope you guys like your family because you're not going to really want to escape and watch the football
haven't looked that far ahead.
Oh, it is. I mean, we get now.
Detroit's playing.
Detroit, but I think it's it'll be fun to watch Detroit. But the Cowboys game is now going to be Danny DeVito versus Cooper Rush or
Danny DeVito.
Happy 80th birthday, Danny DeVito. Also, whoever
DiNucci.
Yeah, no, it's not DiNucci. It's the guy with the Italian agent that looks like he's from a mobster movie.
DiNucci. Gucci DiNucci. No, that was the Broncos guy.
That was the Broncos guy. It's
DeVito.
Tommy DeVito.
Tommy, yeah.
There we go. Nah, not DiNucci. But
Tommy DeVito.
They might as well play Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito's a little undersized for quarterback in the NFL.
I mean, maybe he'll go first overall if the Panthers have the first pick again. Who knows? We got Keith Brugman says, good morning. Right in theme, if each team's performance were a breakfast meal, describe the Broncos and Falcons, please. The Broncos were a complete meal. You get the classic number one where you get the eggs, the hash browns, you get pancakes there as well. You probably get bacon and sausage. Not for Scott. He'll get more of the carbs maybe on that one. Do you eat eggs, Scott?
Oh, yeah.
You do eat. Okay, so maybe some more eggs or maybe an Eggs Benedict. I mean, for me, complete Broncos win. It's the complete spread. For the Falcons, it's in this one. Maybe it's
we're going to say the same thing, which is going to be amazing.
No, I'm probably not going to say the same thing. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say they're greasy eggs that make you run in for the toilet right after you have your coffee in the morning. That's what the Falcons. That perfectly describes the Falcons' defense. I'd say grits because grits are soft and runny, but the old Jerry Glanville defense in the 70s got nicknamed the Grits Blitz, which was an attack style. I was like, so I don't want to put down grits by saying that this is a soft and runny defense. It's painful to watch the Atlanta Falcons play defense. I mean, y'all saw it. Y'all were listening to the announcers. It's 3rd and 3. Why are they dropping 8 yards off the line of scrimmage and just letting them catch the ball and turn for the first down? There's nobody on them before they get to the first down. So again, the one thing I would warn y'all a little bit on this, just to pump the brakes a little bit, because I'm with you. I've said 9-5 is within reach now. 2-8, 2-8. Here comes the Colts. There's going to be some false positives in this game. Nix, don't expect Nix to go for 304 every game. He's not going to be that comfortable every time. I think Devon Vele is a dude. I think he's a legit 2.5 wide receiver 3 who can help you out. Mims has his breakout game. I don't necessarily expect that week to week because he will not see that much space every week. Want to get back to
in a role though, Scott. Like he's not a receiver. He's more of a gadget option. But the fact that's testament to him being coachable.
But if that's all you do is a gadget, you're easy to defend.
I do like to have it's kind of like a pitcher, right? Like you don't have to throw the slurve every time, but the fact that you have that in your arsenal, and now teams have to game plan for it too. They have to take time out of their schedule to be like, okay, what does it look like when Mims is out there? What's the assignment? So he's not what you want for a trade up back into the second round wide receiver, but he's found a role. And I think that's as much a testament to the coaching staff and their ingenuity, innovative minds as it is Mims as a player. But
getting back to Rob here, because Rob wants to talk some running backs here. Appreciate the super chat, Rob. He says, good morning, Nick and Scott, the best MHH team. Does Estime get more time down the stretch? Javonte did well, but was surprised by how much work he got. Javonte had success early. Javonte and Estime weren't necessarily the right back to attack. They were okay. They were fine to attack the Falcons defense because they're not taking advantage of all the space that's given. They're I'm going to make my own type of space. Nate Landman and Caden Ellis are pretty good tacklers if they get there. Nate Landman can't run, though. He doesn't go sideline to sideline. And I thought it might be McLaughlin who had the big game, and it turns out it was Mims. And then Franklin coming out with a screen. You get a skill player with any kind of speed. So I think it's getting back to Nick's point, having the diversification of weaponry back there with Mims, Estime, and McLaughlin and Javonte Williams, it's good. It gives you some options. Like none of one of those 4 are the complete package, but they all can offer different things. And if you can mix them up a little bit and not just be obvious, like, oh, here's Mims, he's in motion. Okay, jet sweep. We know he's not going to turn that thing up and run a wheel route, Nick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're right now going with a hot hand at the running back position. We've had, I think it was Sean Payton or somebody on the Broncos offense talked about that. So my advice is don't bank on any of them in fantasy right now. I guess the Broncos do have some bad defenses coming down the tracks here. Although the Colts have been playing much better defense as of late, and Cleveland still has some pretty good defensive pieces. But overall, it's going to be a hot hand approach. And that's really, the only thing that I thought the Broncos didn't dominate in this game, Scott, was the overall rush game. It was efficient, but I think you had one classic or categorized explosive run in this game. You had a 14-yard rush. It might have been the touchdown from Javonte Williams. And other than that, you just really didn't have a down-to-down, overwhelming offensive rushing attack in this game. And that is something that maybe down the stretch against better defenses, now that Bo is starting to operate at a extremely efficient level, passing, it's starting to become a trend there. You'd like to maybe see a little bit more efficiency from the running back-centric run game. But again, I think that Sean Payton has started to utilize, and Bo Nix is executing the quick behind the line of scrimmage screen game where that can supplement your run game. So while it's going to affect the pass game, right? How much, talked again, the ADOT being 4.1 in this game. This was the best screen passing game I've seen from the Broncos since Peyton Manning's days when they were just dominant.
They're just not going to have that much space.
No, I agree with you. But
and Thomas Younger coming in says, I hit on this one early, Thomas. Yeah. You'll have to remember the Falcons were pretty beat up. They had a lot of injuries. Denver played great. Just scratch the whole top line, Thomas. The Falcons have played this soft, passive, backward step defense all season. And the guys that were missing were not key players. In fact, they basically had stopped playing. One of them was Taquan Graham. They basically stopped playing him because they'd gone to a 2 defensive lineman set. They run, you guys hear us say 4-3 and 3-4, and let's go to a 5-2 nickel and all these type of things. They run a 2-man front with 2 edges. They run a 2-4-5 nickel. It's the softest thing I've ever seen. It's a Pac-12, Big 12, give up 50 points defense. Yeah. Concede the run, don't give up the big plays. Anything underneath is fair game. They do that on purpose, and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And this was not maybe the biggest injury on there was again Charlie Warner, the tight end, who is a blocking tight end who helps key the running game. But as far as defense goes, no. This was a crap scheme Atlanta defense that has been playing like garbage all season, at least the last 6 weeks. They've gotten worse as the season goes on, against a brilliant play calling strategist with a quarterback who can execute that game plan. Mm-hmm. And it was a blowout.
Yeah.
Wasn't injuries. The Falcons there aren't Falcons fans that are saying injuries, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that maybe Grady Jarrett wasn't 100% obviously with the Achilles he played, but that was non-impact. Granted, he's been not super impactful all season, but yeah, this was just a thorough beatdown. And I said the only area of this game that had come out like, oh, maybe this could have been a little better was just the overall rushing game. I did want to say hello to Pearl Heater, who we had on here. I think Pearl's Facebook was hacked prior. Pearl, I got like weird like messages from your account, and I'm like, hey, is this actually Pearl? And then all of a sudden your account had different profile pictures. So glad to see you're back. I've been wondering how you're doing after that, because you're one of our ride or dies out here in these morning shows. So hope you're doing well. Hope the corgis are all great. Miguel comes in and says, morning, fellas. The Deacons knew something was up with Atlanta. I expect a shootout and not a whooping. Great win. I will say I said this on the Falcons show, Scott. I think this game was very similar, opposite foot, but very similar to the Broncos and the Ravens game, where early on the Falcons are moving the ball pretty well. They just couldn't finish drives. And instead of going for it like Denver did in the game against Baltimore, they kicked field goals, but they were moving the ball pretty well and then had self-inflicted wounds, penalties, et cetera, once they got into plus territory. But they could not do anything against the Broncos offense. And Denver goes down and scores a touchdown with not a lot of time left in the first half to go up 21-6. And then the Falcons do get the ball back to start off the next half rather than what happened in the Ravens game where they got the ball back and scored. But they go 3 and out. Denver scores another touchdown. It's at that point 28-6, game over. I mean, at that point, it's weird. It's the flow of the game is off. I'm not going to totally hold it against the Falcons or also say the Broncos are, absolutely elite just because how the game flowed in this one. It just spun out of control. So just like as Denver wasn't as bad as they showed the final score versus the Ravens, I don't think Denver was that much better as Atlanta because the game got a little funky there. But, sometimes games like that happen when you are that dominating as the Broncos were.
I wasn't expecting a shootout because I knew Denver would go on long drives. What I was expecting was half a dozen possessions each if the Falcons could convert, which I trusted the Broncos defense to shut down the Falcons offense more than I trusted the Falcons defense to be able to get the Broncos off the field. So, I said 17-16, I think was what I predicted based on, and it could be a 2-hour game. Well, the first half was over in an hour. The first half played out exactly like I expected it to, except the Broncos converted. More. They had 3 times in the red zone and had 17 points.
4 for 4 touchdowns
in the first half.
Oh, in the first half, I think they were 3 for 3.
Yeah, they because they kicked the field goal. It was 17 points, or was it 21-6?
It was 21-6.
Yeah, so the conversion rate was higher than I expected. So that changed the second half, and then they ended up getting the over. But as far as the long drives, the Falcons playing backwards, and Sean Payton and Bo Nix just taking little bites, that said they'll nickel and dime you to death. That was way, way too predictable, unfortunately. I wasn't expecting a shootout at all. One, Denver's defense is too good, and the Falcons play too soft on defense that Denver would just take their time and methodically drive.
And that's something to the maturity of Bo Nix and Sean Payton and this offense as a whole. The Falcons played bend, don't break, and they didn't really necessarily break, but Denver going 4 for 4 in the red zone in this game, that is incredible. And also I'd read this in the Falcons game, Scott, but would you score 4 touchdowns on your first 5 drives? And like each of those was 9+ play drives where they scored touchdowns. So it wasn't like this big chunk explosive play. The Falcons are scheming that up, but that means that Denver has to operate as a veteran cohesive unit. You have to execute time and time again. And teams are mostly betting that you can't do that. Well, Denver did a pretty good job staying ahead of the sticks. Bo Nix operated it pretty well, and they just executed. And I am thoroughly impressed with how that takes a mature, coordinated, cohesive offense to do that, even against what the Falcons are doing this season. Granted, it's a little bit of a lower bar, but still everybody plays enough teams over the course of the season that it all comes out in the wash anyway. And Denver executed again like a veteran squad, and that's a really good sign for this Bo Nix and Sean Payton relationship in the offense going forward.
How have I described Zach Wilson? This has nothing to do with him being a Broncos in the past. What scared me about Zach Wilson? Why was I out on him early?
The more time he had in the pocket, the worse the results became.
That is terrifying. Yeah. What would you say about Bo Nix?
He is.
Give him time. He's a freaking surgeon.
Yep. And that's something that I think we haven't given enough, even us, Scott, as much as, trenches. People are starting, thank God, the NFL media on the whole, they're giving Sean Payton credit. They're giving Bo Nix credit, but everybody is adding the caveat that this Broncos offensive line, specifically in pass protection, I think they're just middle of the pack, above average run protection, but pass protection, they're one of the 3 best units in the entire NFL. I think they only gave up pressure in this game about 20% of the time. The NFL average is like 35 to 40. And the
I think they only hit Bo Nix twice, and he probably invited pressure on that.
Yeah. But
when I say invited pressure, hold, as long as I can, throw. That's not pressuring the quarterback. That's a quarterback inviting pressure. It counts as a pressure for your stat heads. It ain't pressure.
And PFF attempts to isolate that, where they assess blame on pressures on quarterbacks or offensive lines. And the Broncos offensive line have not only I think they've given up the least pressures this season, but their rate of pressures blamed on the offensive line, I believe, is the lowest in the league, because Nix, especially early on, was creating pressure within the pocket because he just wasn't comfortable back there. He's starting to look comfortable now, and this offensive line is playing incredible football. We got to give a shout out to Sean Payton there. We got to give a credit to Zach Strief.
You also played the Steelers your second game.
Yeah, and also there's how much the issue with the Broncos has been more so, it's not losing the one-on-one matchups in pass protection. It is the schemed pressures where there's guys coming untouched.
The Steelers, and they had 11 guys on the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, that was the one game where they
play the Falcons, and there's 6 guys within 20 yards of the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, without a doubt. So we can't, obviously offense is the name of the game, and we have more super chats to get to. Of course, I don't know if we said hello to Mark Schrader, our guy. Yeah, good morning, Mark. Awesome to see you, Mark, with the coffee emojis. I need it. I'm on like 4 hours of sleep right now, maybe like 10 collective hours of sleep, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. So God bless coffee. We're here. We're out here. I'm feeling energized because of the Broncos play. We got Fox Family breaks as well. Go ahead, Scott. Hands off the wheel. Great win yesterday. Nix keeps showing improvements. Benito's looking good and consistent. Yeah, the Broncos defense as a whole had an awesome game in this one. I thought it was a unique matchup for the Broncos. Now, again, Denver's offense laying it on like they did completely changed the balance of the Falcons. But I thought that the outside zone and how they utilize the slot to win man coverage matchups would be tough for the Broncos. And early on, Jaquan McMillan was obviously the 2 things I was worried about were the things that the Falcons tried to do. They tried to isolate Jaquan McMillan, and pretty good results early on for the Falcons moving the football. They also tried to get to the ball to the running backs in space. And I think it was efficient, but not explosive for the Broncos on that front. But I want to give a shout out to Vance Joseph specifically in this one in the Broncos scheme. So this year, the Broncos have been a fastball team, Scott. It is, we're going to send 5 or 6, and we're going to play man coverage on the back end. And good luck stopping us. Falcons have been pretty good against man coverage. And if you're doing that against a team with Bijan Robinson, if he gets behind that blitz, you could be in a world of hurt. So this Broncos, not as blitz-centric in this one. And you saw a lot more cover too. And on 3rd and downs too as well, Scott. And that's something the Broncos have not done this season. And credit to the Broncos, credit to Vance Joseph. They executed it well. And it's awesome that Denver looks like they have a good enough defense now that it's not just this is what we do. It's we can game plan for what the opposition does. So good sign for what this team can do down the stretch. And shout out to Vance Joseph and the defense. 6 points. The game, like I said, the game kind of got out of hand. The Falcons moved the ball better than a 6-point outcome. But Denver went up against a top 10 offense and delivered on defense.
Looking at Benito, there's only a few things in this world I know, and one of them is cars. And looking at Nick Benito from Fox Family Breaks talking, he's looking really good and consistent. If you make a mistake, if you go to sleep for 1 second on Nick Benito, he is so quick, he's going to beat you. He's going to beat you around the edge every single time. He is so quick. I started thinking he's kind of a one-trick pony in that regard. Now he's gotten better. Don't get me wrong. Now it's like a car. He's like a Tesla. A Tesla is kind of a one-trick pony. Now, they do a lot of things, I know. The one-trick pony for a Tesla is their 0 to 60 time is just outrageous. It's totally changed the game in automobiles. But that one trick is freaking spectacular. And if your one trick is I can get off the line and beat you to the quarterback, it's pretty nice. And he's gotten better. His entire game has become more well-rounded for sure. But that one trick, that quickness off the line, it's special. It's top tier.
I feel like I always make the baseball analogy in here, Scott. He's a closer, and he's got the fastball, and he's kind of work on the off-speed stuff. And this game, I think he's definitely bulked up since he's entered the league, Scott. And I know that from people I talk with inside the building, Benito is one of the more weight room oriented players on the team. He is very much a workaholic in that regard. So have no problems with that. I just like I was not huge on the Bo Nix pick. Benito, I thought if Denver playing the Vic Fangio style defense, rushing for pocket cruncher types, Benito, I didn't see him being a guy who, double teams holding up against the edge. He's a speed guy. And now that you're in a more pressure oriented offense or defense, where you're sending 5 guys and getting these one-on-ones.
And I'm getting a lead every now and then.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, you turn these guys loose. The phrase that Phil, what's Phil's name? The triangle offense, Michael Jordan coach.
Knight. No, not Phil Knight. You're thinking of
I know, and all I can think of is Phil Knight and Phil Collins. Anyway,
yeah,
he called it releasing the Dobermans. Is when they go to their press.
Phil Jackson.
Thank you.
Yeah,
getting old with Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, these long length monsters. Dennis Rodman out there. He called it releasing the Dobermans. That's how I felt in the second half yesterday. You didn't have to worry about the run anymore. The Falcons they got behind, and then they abandoned the run to start the second half, down 2 scores anyway. I think Tyler Algier had 1 carry all game. I think Bijan Robinson only had 1 carry in the second half. Pin your ears back. Vance Joseph released the Dobermans in the second half. It was fun to watch. It really was fun to watch that defense feeding off one another. And then everybody started to eat. Speaking of Dobermans, here comes Franklin Myers. Here comes
Malcolm
quietly disrupting things for other people. Zach Allen looks like he should be okay too. It wasn't a twist.
He was back out there.
Stomp on him.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you hear Zach Allen sound, you're like, oh no. And then Benito's so fast. If there's no threat of the run against him, he's lethal.
I mean, Jonah Ellis had the awesome sack in this one. Now, granted, Caleb McGarry looked like he got hurt the play before and was kind of limping after that one. So, but still, I mean, he was out there. You beat your guy. Nobody's making excuses for them. So don't feel sorry for them. You're out there.
39 sacks. The Falcons are at 10.
Congrats on getting one in this game, though, Scott. Shout out to you guys. But not you guys, obviously. You're Chelsea Football Club. But I digress. Yeah, the Broncos. What a game from the defensive line. Benito's the one who's the standout for me in this one. But, I mean, you want to give up Devon Key. Once I saw that Brandon Jones was going to be out in this game, I was, because we all remember what Key did in the Baltimore game. A very poor outcome. And Brandon Jones has been better this season than P.J. Locke. And you had a Falcons team that had been one of the top 10 drop back pass games in football. Now, granted, I think a lot of that is this Falcon teams is a little bit of a front runner, right? When they had to play actually true static drop back and the threat of the play action wasn't there anymore and the Broncos could pin their ears back. I don't think the offensive line is that good in pass protection. And
They're okay with that in the 2-minute drill because the ball's coming out quick.
Yeah.
One read and go there. So they've had a lot of success in the 2-minute drill, but not as a basis of your offense.
Yep. And once you're behind the threat of the play action kind of dips a bit, and it didn't have enough there. But shout out to Key, but the big winner for me on this one on the defensive side. And Scott, I mean, I'm biased again, trying not to be with the anchor bias here because coming around was not big on Bo Nix. I look like I totally misevaluated the physical gifts. The arm is good enough. The arm is better than I thought. I still don't think it's top 10 in the NFL, but it doesn't have to be. The athleticism is the area I didn't see it being this good. And every single coach keeps talking about that as well. So at least I'm in some company. Even Sean Payton, who loved him, is like, I'm surprised how good of an athlete Bo Nix is.
Nobody watched him at Auburn.
I did watch him at Auburn, but it's different even in the SEC, right? He's outrunning linebackers. It's like, oh, holy cow. But anyway,
But at Auburn, he was being chased by 4 guys because there was no threat anywhere else.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, but he's been incredible. Benito had an awesome year. But this team, again, it's a trench team. We're very excited. Got part of what you can do defensive trench wise is because you have Patrick Surtain out there. He is the straw that stirs the drink and completely changes what you can do. But the turnaround on the Denver Broncos defensive front this year and the continued growth of the Broncos offensive line, I think, is probably the most underappreciated story of this team this season. And of course, we're going to have to talk about it because that's where we love watching football. But I mean, the additions of Roach, the reinvigoration of DJ Jones, who did not look good last season, Benito taking another step forward, Cooper obviously taking a step forward, what John Franklin Myers has done for this team, Scott. It's been
one of the best acquisitions in the offseason in the NFL, period, was John Franklin Myers.
And I don't think anybody's talking about him that way. And the fact that Denver had the vision.
It allowed everybody else to get better. Yeah. Because now I don't have to put DJ Jones over the nose. I can move Zach Allen just a little bit farther outside, a little wider. It allowed everybody else to get better.
Yep. But the vision of the Broncos team building, Vance Joseph as well, Zach Allen, edge player, for the most part, coming out of college, starts to move a little bit more inside with the Cardinals. Now he's a top 5 interior defensive lineman in football. Franklin Myers, a little bit more 7 technique, sometimes reduced 4-eye 3. Now he's pretty much primarily 4-eye kind of guy, and he's been dominant there. So this attacking front defense for the Broncos and the defensive front has been awesome this season. It is a team that obviously there'll be some flux there. Your most 2 important players on your defensive front right now, Scott, you'd probably agree it's Allen and Benito with Cooper third. Right, even though you just signed Cooper, it's probably Allen then Benito, your most valuable guys up front.
Yeah, I love Cooper. Again, he doesn't do anything as well as Benito's get off. He doesn't have that one trick, but he does everything else a little bit better. He's just a more well-rounded player. Let's hit this one on real quick. We've kind of danced around it. Does Bo Nix have more upside? Jalen Hurts than you initially thought. David, the one I've been comparing him to since we've started doing this, and I feel like I'm the only one that has, is Joe Burrow. I think, the ability, because Joe Burrow has never struck me as having just the Brett Favre type arm. What he does, as well as anybody, he rushed for 800 yards his last 2 years at LSU too, so he's a good athlete. What he does is plays brilliant ball, and he does a great job of distributing to his playmakers. Well, Joe Burrow is considered one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. So for me, I won't say the ceiling, but my comp in the NFL for where can Bo Nix go has always been Joe Burrow. Now, can he get there? I don't know. Right. That's always the doubt. You're always a little bit worried when you're like, okay, he's the draft is always about traits, and that's the hardest thing to do with quarterbacks.
For where we sit, Scott, because we don't, from where we sit, right? Like we don't, for a quarterback, a lot depends on what's between the ears and what's in the chest.
From where everybody sits, because that's why half the guys bust in the NFL. If it was any easier for the guys with $1 billion budget, they wouldn't be drafting Zach Allen in the second.
That's fair. That's
fair. It's not quite as helter-skelter as kickers. There's 10,000 guys that can kick a 50-yard field goal. There's only a couple dozen that can do it with 80,000 people screaming at you. It's hard. So does Bo Nix, and I think that Bo Nix was always a better passer than Jalen Hurts coming out. So I wouldn't say Hurts. The guy, David, that I've said for if he reaches the top of his physical traits was Joe Burrow.
The 2 that I said coming out is I thought Alex Smith and Dak Prescott pre-knee injury. Now, Dak's become, even though the offense has fallen apart out there, I really hate what the Cowboys are doing, but I think Dak's still a really good quarterback, one of the better pocket quarterbacks. He's asked to make more tight window throws than any quarterback in the NFL consistently. But Dak pre-injury, I mean, Scott, he came from a power spread Mississippi State. He had Mississippi State ranked like number 2 in the country when he was out there as well. And then he tore up his knee, and he's not been the same running threat since. But those are the two that I thought were the upper echelon, and that might even be underselling if he keeps playing like this. Now, granted, broader sample size, the Broncos have found their option here for the foreseeable future. I'm not ready to crown him a perennial top 10 quarterback yet at this point. Broncos country, if you want to do that, that's fine. I wouldn't do that with anybody at this point. I wasn't even ready to say that for sure about CJ Stroud last year after having a once every decade type of rookie season as a passer.
But like we said last week, Nick, when I'm going down my list of, okay, here's where I want to improve the team with the resources I have, it takes me a long, I don't get to quarterback before I run out of resources.
You are right now. The only question is for Bo Nix, for me at least, it's where does he fall once you get like 18 to 24 starts? Where does that sample solidify him? And also it's, what level of quarterback he is at that point, and what does it take to use that rookie quarterback contract cheat code? Because Denver, the way you're set up with Sean Payton, the defense, and just the salary cap and everything, all your picks, you are set to be a really aggressive building contending team, and Chiefs should feel a little bit of heat. Unfortunately for the Broncos, you have 2 of the best 5 quarterbacks in the entire NFL in your division, so that makes things a little harder. I think Herbert and Mahomes are definitely up there. If I was taking 5 quarterbacks in the league right now, it would be Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Herbert, Burrow. But Nix is playing great, and he is answering the questions we have. Again, I don't think they're asking him to reinvent the wheel, right? He's not asked to make tight window throw after tight window throw. He is afforded some benefits with the scheme, with what Sean Payton's doing, and especially with the offensive line, Scott. I mean, their pass protection is, I think, the difference of the offense this season, and I'm glad people are starting to talk about it more. But that's also coaching. That's why you pay the guys, right? I'm not holding that against Nix. It's the positive circumstance of his situation, and he's running with it. So that's great. That's what you want. That's a benefit to Payton, both Paytons, George and Sean, and a great thing for this Broncos team going forward. So yeah, Bo Nix looks like a guy that you're going to be able to have a chance with over the next, 4 seasons, I guess, after this. And I think you do have the ability to build a championship roster around him. Now, again, I don't want to say that he's going to be a perennial top 5 guy and a superstar Hall of Fame quarterback. I think, if anybody's out there doing that, then you're a little bit more gung-ho than I am, just because I'd rather have the robust sample size. But he's playing well beyond my wildest dreams, and he looks like he's capable of being he has the potential to be a perennial top 10 guy with how he's playing right now. And one thing, Scott, I know I'm ranting here. It's already 7:30 my time. This is unbelievably. So he's much better in the pocket. You see him improving. One thing that he improved so much from the first 2 to 4 weeks of the season, Scott, turnover-worthy plays. Over the last 8 starts from Bo Nix, how many turnover-worthy plays do you think PFF has him assessed with?
8.
8 games.
8. 1 a game.
1 turnover-worthy play in 8 games. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So protecting the football as well. That is remarkable. So we got Fat Sertan coming in here. Says, God bless Bo Nix and the Broncos country. Thank you so much. Doug is in here as well. Good morning. All of our remaining games are winnable. Just would like the maturation of the team continue. Yeah, that's one thing, Scott, I get a little worried about is like counting your chickens before they hatch. This is the NFL, right? And anything can happen any week. So we'll see what Denver has not won in Vegas yet. So that one's, we'll hopefully take care of it. Denver will be favorites for sure, but we won't know until we know, right? So I would never underestimate a divisional opponent because weird things happen there.
Speaking of maturation, if I was a hater out there and I'm thinking, okay, comps this, comps that, I might say, well, look at Mac Jones. People always want to play whataboutism, right? I'm not having that. One, I think Bo Nix has a better arm overall. I think he's bigger, stronger, and faster. So I think the physical traits are a lot better than Mac Jones. and two, the maturation, it's not even close. Mac Jones ended up becoming the guy who was most likely to get his ass kicked by his own teammates, and that's not going to happen with Bo Nix. So again, continue the maturation of this team to continue, and the team building aspect of the offseason this year is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be the most fun that we've probably had, Nick, with the first round draft pick, some salary cap space. I don't have to constantly talk about quarterback, all winter. That it's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you for the stars, Doug. Troy coming in. He won't get to see this, and he probably didn't get to see me shoot this one down already. So Troy, I'm not going to let you have this. He says, "Thank you guys. Can't watch watch now. Love that we found our quarterback. Finally, Atlanta's secondary was decimated, but you can only beat who you play. Love our grit." Atlanta secondary, they start five. They start a base nickel defense with two up front, four linebackers, two stand-up edges, and five. Their nickel and their second cornerback were out of this game. So their best three players, anybody will ask, is Jesse Bates, Justin Simmons, and A.J. Terrell. Those guys were all healthy. Mike Hughes is a journeyman who worked his way into a starting position, over to the surprise of many, Clark Phillips, who did play this game. And then your nickel, why are you playing a nickel base anyway in this game when you're playing against the Denver Broncos, who are limited at the wide receiver position? Why not add a body to try and stop the underneath game? So they went with Richie Grant instead. So no, Troy, this defense was not decimated by injuries. This defense has been decimated by defensive coordinator Jimmy Lake. And there isn't a Falcons fan out there that is going to be saying, oh, yeah, but the injuries. No. We're not having it. The Broncos beat their asses, and it wasn't about the injuries on that side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do got to wrap it up. One thing I did tease in the comments, Scott, just the playoff picture. Things broke pretty well for the Broncos yesterday overall, just keeping an eye on everything. I know that for some reason, the New York Times Athletic have not really been buying the Broncos in whatever model they're using. But Denver is still up there. I think they're like at 36%. That's the lowest I've seen. NFL.com has them up at like 64.
I'll be at this point, I'll be a little surprised if they don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, and just with the I just saw Seth Walder over at ESPN has the Broncos percents at 51%. With the rest of the AFC teams behind them, you have the Colts at 32, the Dolphins at 15, and the Bengals at 14. So that's spread out. It's like Broncos versus all those teams combined.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Obviously,
Froyland had the Broncos in before the Bengals loss yesterday, and before the Broncos win. And again, how do you look at this next slate of games and go, oh yeah, the Broncos, this is high watermark for them. 2-8. Now, granted,
it's the NFL.
Myles Garrett and Max Crosby by themselves, I could play a 110 and get more pressure on the quarterback with just those two guys all by themselves. So it's not going to be this easy. You will never see this much time and space, maybe ever again, as long as you watch NFL football as you got to see yesterday. But these teams are bad. They're still bad teams. Yeah. These are still bad teams that have pretty much packed it in for the season, that a confident, well-playing, well-executed, mistake-free, knock on wood, mistake-free Denver Broncos team should chew up and spit out, just like they did against the Carolina Panthers and New Orleans Saints when they were going up against mistake-prone, injured teams playing poorly. You beat the hell out of them.
Yep.
That's what this team's going to do in the next two games.
Yeah. Overall, it's been a pretty good journey here for the Broncos. You're sitting here at 6-5. The middle class of the AFC is terrible. It's going to be hard for the Broncos to get up beyond the 7 seed because you've lost the head-to-head to the Ravens and the Steelers, and the Chargers have a 2-game lead on you now. But you got 6 games left, and a lot can happen. So we'll see what happens. The Broncos are obviously ahead of schedule and everything. Bo Nix, since that Carolina game, even though Denver smacked the Saints, I didn't think he looked very good in the Saints game, but Carolina game on, he has looked a lot better. Hopefully that can continue. We always said, Scott, growth is not linear, right? It's a little bit of up and down, but the trend line is definitely pointing up. And it's going to be great. And 78 Leadhead says, here's a fact. Will you see Will Levis go for those stats against Falcons D? No, you wouldn't. Will Levis is a erratic player. He's not going to be able to execute the A-dot underneath stuff.
Here's the facts. Will Levis making his first appearance last year as a rookie, his first appearance in the NFL ever, had a game that got the game ball in his jersey sent to the Hall of Fame because he made the Falcons defense. Well, the Falcons defense made him look so good. So the facts are maybe not. This defense is actually worse than the Falcons defense last year. So bad example, 78 Leadhead on this one. Because Will Levis's started jersey and football from that game are actually in the Hall of Fame from last year.
And one final fact here, Scott. Maybe Bo Nix's jersey will be in the Hall of Fame from this game, Scott, so you can do this as well. First time in NFL history, Scott, for any quarterback, or first rookie in NFL history, completes 80% of his passes for 4+ touchdowns and 300+ yards. So shout out to Bo Nix, one of the best singular games from a rookie ever. Efficient and did the job in protecting the football. Just keeps improving. Again, I hate the anchor bias, right? We make our evaluations, but then this is a new slate here. And I said early on, we'll give Bo Nix the first 8 games. We'll evaluate it in a silo, but it's not going to be grand sweeping. After that eight games, we'll see where he looks from there. Well, since week 7, it looks like it's clicking for Bo Nix. So we got Brandon Williams comes in and says, what do we do about Bowles and Sutton in the offseason? We're out of time, Brandon. I don't know if this is a super chat, but we're going to have plenty of time to talk about Bowles. As far as Sutton goes, you still have another year of control. So I don't think you're going to be forced to do anything. I put Sutton in the same category as we have questions with Zach Allen and Nick Benito also have just 1 year of control left after the season. So there's going to be some interesting decisions this offseason and the 2025 offseason. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, Bowles is the singular gigantic domino for this team that is going to completely change the direction of the Broncos organization and offseason moves, what they decide to do with him. So we'll see. I hope to bring him back, given what the offensive line is doing, but who knows? He's going to get paid.
Yeah, we'll see. Because I think at this point he's going to want to test free agency. He's made it this far, but again, I think Sutton's under contract. He'll be here next year unless something strange happens. So I don't think there's much of a question there. It's Bowles. And my impression is that Bowles has been frustrated as a Denver Bronco. And now that there's a bright shining light at the end of the tunnel and it's not a freight train, that he'll be more apt to stick around. He'll want to play around. But once you've gone this far, you might as well test free agency and see if someone wants to throw stupid money at you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, with how bad this offensive tackle draft class is, that's something that you want to watch for sure. But yeah, we got to get out of here. I think we're Yentas. I don't know what that is. Hopefully
I don't know what Yentas are. Too old for that, dude.
I hope that's not a slur. But
hope we just didn't get flagged by YouTube.
Yeah. Hopefully things. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. I don't know. But overall, Broncos belt to butt in this one. They win in all phases. Bo Nix looks incredible. The defensive line looks awesome. And the busybody. Okay, that's okay. Well, I'm not going to get canceled for being a busybody. That's good. I need to rest though. Goodness. So gonna get out of here. Help the wife and go check out on the little baby here. Appreciate everyone. Happy Victory Monday. Shout out to all our super chats today. Troy Boer coming in here. Patriot Tex, Proud Zenial, Jason Kopp, Michael Ronquillo, of course, Perry West with the big one, Rob Bucksbaum, Keith Brugman, Miguel Santa-Steven. Thank you so much. Mark Schrader, Fox Family Breaks, David Cromwell, Doug Reichel, Troy Boer again, Fat Sertan. I love that one. And Michael Ronquillo again. I don't know if we got the great show today. Go Bo Broncos. Go Michael. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you're following Scott and I on Twitter. Scott's at Scott Kennedy. I'm at Nick Kendell, MHH. Also follow us over at X at Mile High Huddle. We're also over at Blue Sky as well now. I told Chad, hey, better go grab that handle with that site exploding. So over there, if you're on there. We're also on Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle and Facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod. And as that ticker says there underneath, please subscribe, like, and share over on YouTube. Scott, kind of both sides here, right? Falcons get beat, depressing on that one, but jubilation over here for the Broncos. So exciting. 6-5, Broncos already on the over. Any final thoughts?
No, I've said this defense is so much fun to watch for me, and watching them get to pin their ears back was a blast. and then seeing the maturation of this offense coming together is got to be a lot of fun. And again, I'm looking forward to. I'm not going through the season yet. Again, I think there's a playoff season, but what winds my clock is off-season stuff and going into hopefully coming off a playoff berth with a bunch of cash and a bunch of draft picks. This offseason is going to be a lot of fun. This team, again, said it after the Ravens game. We'll say it again now. It just resonates a little bit better. That arrow is headed in the right direction.
Yeah. Vibes are good, man. Vibes are good. Broncos D, Broncos O, everything is going well. Appreciate everything. We'll see you guys again I'll see you Tuesday night. We'll see you Wednesday morning. Continue to choose kindness and compassion. Go Broncos.